Welcome one, welcome all. Thank you for tuning in to Cedarly Radio, your guide to films playing at the Art House for the week of April 12th to April 18th. My name is Aaron Spears.
And I'm Dave Huffman. On this week's episode, we'll be discussing The Public, Diane, and Woman at War.
We'll also be discussing some more palate-cleansing films. We'll be doing a quick wrap-up of the Cleveland International Film Festival from our point of view, and our Cedarly 3 picks for favorite activist films. Well, we always like to start off the show with the last scene first, and this is usually where I say, Dave, what is the last film you've seen?
No, Aaron, this week I'm going to ask you, what's the last thing you saw?
Thanks. So every year when the Cleveland International Film Festival ends, it's usually, pretty high-quality programming. I always do a palate cleanser when it's done.
I understand that.
And this year, I don't know why. I think it was because I mentioned Frank Grillo when we were talking about Wolf Warrior
right,
2
yes.
Last week with Chinese action films. And I was like, I'm going to go. I wanted to see Donnybrook, which he was in, but I didn't see it streaming anywhere. Right. So I ended up going with The Purge, Anarchy.
Oh, I thought you were going to say you watched Donnybrook.
No, I want to, but I didn't find that one. I was like, oh, this is perfect. I wanted grizzled Frank Grillo with guns.
There you go.
Fighting for the good, I guess, instead of the way he was with Big Daddy and Wolf Warrior 2, fighting for the evil imperialist Americans.
Well, the Purge movies are just hilariously entertaining. I have a friend who gives away an award every year. He calls it the Purgy. It's the film that says good. The Purge the most. And
really?
Guess what movie always wins it?
The Purge.
Yeah, The Purge.
One of the Purges, yeah.
Because you just, as you watch it, you count how many times they say the word purge. It's very entertaining.
That's true. I didn't. Yeah, there's probably some supercut on YouTube of that.
Or you can make it into a drinking game if you don't mind dying of alcohol poisoning.
It's I've never seen any of them. That was the first one I'd watched. So which is weird because Ethan Hawke's in the first one. You think I would have seen?
I would have thought you
would
have seen it.
But no, I jumped in with Frank Grillo, and it works as a palate cleanser, I guess. It has the feel of the way people argue that zombie movies are a metaphor for like rampant consumer culture. Well, I guess Dawn of the Dead mainly, but a lot of the Romero stuff. It just seems like there is a nugget there where like this should be a little bit. It's fine for what it is. It's good genre films, I guess, and the premise is a good hook. But I don't know. Like it could be a little better. Do better.
They could all be better. But again, if you're just looking for mindless entertainment,
that's what I was looking for. Yeah,
and you want to just count how many times people say the word purge.
I didn't, but I will when I watch him in Election Year because he's in that one too. So I'm like, well, now I got to finish up with the
next time
the third one, I guess.
We actually lost track on the last one, the first Purge that was out. Is that the last year?
Fourth one then?
Fourth or fifth.
And there's a TV series I think now going. So we
couldn't even keep track because there's like people in the background on like TV, like news coverage.
Oh, right.
So
yeah,
you can't even keep track.
And are you purging this year? Are you doing the purge? Yeah, that's true. Now it's going to be comical when I watch Election Year.
Well, for once, I'm not the one that saw certified garbage.
That's true. Yeah, it's true.
So the last film I saw was actually something at the film festival over the weekend. I saw the Ted Bundy film. It was a late addition to the schedule. I saw Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile, starring Zac Efron.
If I was holding a microphone, I would clap that you remember that title because I cannot get the order of those words right when I say the title of that movie.
I always want to change the word shockingly to incredible. I always want to say like extremely wicked.
Loud and incredibly close.
Incredibly, yeah, because I think of that. So
that film.
It's but it was an interesting take on a serial killer film for sure. And it was by Joe Berlinger, who we've talked about on the show previously from his he also did the documentary that was on Netflix all about Ted Bundy.
Right.
So it's interesting that one filmmaker has a narrative and a documentary about the same subject. That's not that common, and especially also to come out so close together.
Only his second narrative feature he did, which I still defend, Book of Shadows, Blair Witch 2.
Well,
terrible movie, but very fun and a good premise.
He actually referenced it. He was actually at the screening I was at Saturday night at the festival, and he referenced Blair Witch, and he was like, "Not my best work." And I was thinking about, I think if Aaron were here, he'd at least have
I'm not saying his best work, but I'll
defended it a little bit.
To a certain extent. But also, did you notice the main star, who's the actor whose name I don't know, was in the Ted Bundy movie, played his first lawyer.
Yeah, he did actually mention about some of the people that he's worked with that he brought back and had in smaller little roles in this film.
And he always has Metallica involved in these movies too.
And he's got the guy from Metallica's in it. But it was it's an interesting take on a serial killer movie. I don't think it was completely successful, but having heard him at his Q&A kind of explain a little bit more, I actually like the film more. But as I think I've talked to you off mic about, I think that's a little problematic. But if a filmmaker has to explain it to you a little bit better to make you appreciate it, then the film didn't fully succeed.
Right.
But it is worth seeing. It comes out on Netflix. We won't be playing it here.
No, it's like the very beginning of May, so in a few weeks.
Of May, so just a couple of weeks to wait and see that. And then speaking of the film
I was
festival,
going to say, it is finally wrapped.
Yeah, it wrapped up after another huge record-breaking year, I think.
Yeah, 105,000 attendees.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
And it was a great event, as always. I only got down there to see a handful of films because, like I always kind of jokingly, people always act like, oh, are you excited for the film festival? I'm like, well, I'm excited it's going on and it's great and I'm going to see some things. But
yeah.
basically every day of my life, I'm, watching 4 or 5 movies.
Right.
So it's not uncommon. So kind of every day of my life is sort of a film festival, which is great. I know a lot of people would, love to have my life, but you can't have it because it's mine.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But did you get to see anything, Aaron? I know you were working a lot during the festival.
I did. It wasn't a huge year for watching stuff. I only got like 10, 12 movies in, 11 movies in. One I would mention because I believe it is streaming or it's coming very soon. It's actually it's a 2017 Japanese film called One Cut of the Dead.
Oh, yes.
Which my general reaction when someone says, hey, there's a zombie movie you have to see. It's the same thing mostly or similar like to World War II films. I was like, I'm done for now. I'm done for now unless there's a really great hook or premise. Mm-hmm. And this one does. It has a really good hook that it's a kind of making of a zombie movie.
Right.
So it's a film crew, a very poorly put together film crew which lacks sort of like talent and ingenuity or anything that are filming a zombie movie in this location when a zombie outbreak maybe or doesn't happen. But it's an interesting bit of stunt filmmaking in that it starts off with like a 30-minute one take scene of this zombie attack, which is astounding.
Yeah.
But as it goes on, you kind of see how it's astounding that it's one take, but you see all the trouble with the production. You're like, wait, what are you shooting this for? And this is terrible acting, and you're not really believing it at all. And then the next like hour after that kind of gives you the backstory on why everything that you just saw happen, both as a film and as a zombie attack and everything. And it is really inventive. It really does. The hook does save it, and it is one of those. I'm like, all right, this is the last zombie movie I'm watching for a while because gets so meta that it's.
What about Jim Jarmusch's zombie movie that's coming out?
Damn it. Okay, well, that's different though because that's a director that I follow. Period. So I totally forgot, and that actually does look pretty fun.
It does.
All right.
Well, I'm intrigued.
One more.
I've been asking people if they've seen the trailer for that. I think it's called The Dead Don't Die.
Dead Don't Die.
Jim Jarmusch's new film, and the trailer plays very much like kind of like just a straight kind of zombie comedy.
It does. It doesn't really have a Jarmusch vibe.
No,
just even in the trailer.
And so I am 100% convinced that the marketing department at, I think it's Focus that's releasing it, has cut a trailer that completely does not represent the film because in no way does that feel like a Jim Jarmusch movie. So, I'm holding out to see it because I know that it's going to be a completely different movie from what that trailer makes it seem like. So I had a friend that was like, "It looks terrible." I'm like, "I'm sure it is not that movie."
That's true. Yeah.
I'm just anxious, but I know that film that you were talking about, One Cut of the Dead. I had a friend that'd seen it at another festival, so I was excited Cleveland was showing it. And I didn't get to go down to see it, so I missed it. So
it was one of those two. I stayed I did my whole day of work, and then after 10 hours, I stayed for the 11:45 p.m. film with a little bit of whiskey in my system, and I was like, I wasn't that sharp, but it was that kind of fun though. Like it didn't necessarily. I mean, you could watch it again and again probably and catch more stuff again because it is like one long take and it gets a little behind the scenes and a little meta where you're like, oh, I totally missed that the first time. Once you know the whole story, it'd be worth revisiting a second time. Anything else that you saw?
I saw a new documentary called Scream Queen, My Nightmare on Elm Street, which was all about the star of the Nightmare on Elm Street 2, Mark Patton, which is...
Oh, was the second?
Is the second.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't read too much on this one.
Street. Yeah, and it was a very good documentary because it's an interesting study on how the film is kind of has a reputation of being like one of the gayest horror movies of all time. There's all this like gay subtext in this film, and it kind of ruined his career at the time, or it did ruin his career, and he just quit acting after it basically and moved to Mexico.
Because it was gay subtext, or just a terrible sequel?
Well, because it was a hit. It did make money, and he's fine in it, but sort of culturally, it was interesting. In horror films, usually the scream queen is a female character.
Oh, yeah,
and,
true.
So in this one, it's a male, and of course, Mark Patton is actually gay, and so the fact that the film read so gay, and then it was in the mid '80s during the AIDS scare, and his lover at the time actually did end up dying of AIDS. You know what I mean? So there was just all these levels of things that kind of like this perfect storm of kind of after Rock Hudson died, there was basically like a gay witch hunt in Hollywood,
Yeah.
you know, to make sure that there was no other kind of like secret gay stars that were going to like die of AIDS and ruin, you know,
Right.
people's careers or, you know, ruin
public reputation
public
that-
reputation
yeah.
and stuff. So it's a very interesting film, kind of looking at that period in American culture during the 80s AIDS scare.
Yeah.
And then also just it's another one of those films that at the time, like, fans kind of didn't really like it, even though it was a hit.
Mm-hmm.
And then it sort of like kind of has gotten rediscovered. And, you know, there's all these like gay horror fans that said like this movie
That's
was
the
like
movie.
the first time that I felt like I could identify with the character on screen. And like, even though the film isn't like, he's not gay in the film.
I was going to ask, is he playing a gay character in the film?
No,
Okay.
and actually, there's it's a good documentary. It's actually produced, executive produced by a friend of mine who lives here in Cleveland, Matt Chinaki, who has been doing some really cool stuff. And it's a really good movie, and I'm sure it's going to play some other festivals. It had its world premiere here in Cleveland, but I'm sure
nice.
it'll be I'm assuming it'll be submitted and hopefully get into some of the LGBT festivals
Sure.
that are going to be out there. And we may even, you know, look to bring it back for a show or two, because I feel like at the film festival, it was a very kind of, you know, gay crowd that came to see it at the film festival. But I do think horror movie fans would be interested in seeing it.
Sure.
Of course, this weekend here in Cleveland is also Cinema Wasteland. It's like the film festival and Cinema Wasteland.
Right.
So it's like a horror movie convention going on at the same time as the film festival. So horror movie fans that
And
might
as-
have been interested in seeing it didn't
Couldn't
even
make it
go
necessarily,
because they're
yeah.
down there at that. So, you know, it was a good movie though. So I'm happy to see that it got made.
So having not seen Nightmare on Elm Street 2 or this documentary, does it have the vibe of Troll 2 Best Worst Movie, where like
No.
you could watch them back to back to get your own like kind of like double feature out of it?
Yes, absolutely, you
behind the
could,
scenes.
100%. Yeah, that would be a great way to watch it. But this movie, again, you don't need to have seen Nightmare on Elm Street 2 to watch this film. If you have, I mean, they show enough of the clips of it, all the stuff
You get
that
the
are
gist.
sort of like, you know, the legendary kind of, you know, dance scene that he does in the middle of the movie that is just super hilariously kind of gay, you know.
Okay.
But it's a really it's a very well crafted or well structured movie. I think you know, from some technical standpoints, it's not the most polished thing, but it is really a very well crafted, well structured documentary.
I did want to mention too, there's a French film called Close Enemies that I'm going to mispronounce his name again, Matthias
Matthias
Schoenhardt's current star of the Mustang here is in that. I don't know if it's necessarily going to be released, but it's definitely worth finding. It's a French version, I would say, of The Departed. Two lifelong friends who grew up in the projects. One goes criminal, one goes cop. And or I guess if you want to be true about it, Infernal Affairs, you know, that kind of story. But it was really, really good. And it had probably the most satisfying ending of any of the movies that I saw, which is always which is to say probably bleak, you know, because it's French, and I liked it. So it's not going to be necessarily a happy ending, but it was a really good narrative that wrapped up well. We also have a few that are already coming soon to the theater here. We'll be talking about The Public here shortly, but we also have Teen Spirit, Wild Nights with Emily and The Brink are already programmed and coming soon to the theater. We'll keep you updated, obviously, on the website and also on Cedar Radio as well.
And then there's a film called Breaking Habits that's going to be opening up on the 19th down at our sister theater, Tower City Cinemas.
Also known as the Nuns with Weed and Guns documentary, right? That people really, really liked. And there were actually a couple of the nuns, I assume, from the movie walking around, unless there were other just local nuns, you know, in the full, not full habit, I guess, but some of the, whatever the headwear is called there. I'm obviously very
not
strict Catholic here.
I'm not Catholic either, so I don't know the name.
But everybody presumed they were with that movie, even if they were just coming to see the movie.
That's hilarious.
They were running around. But good word of mouth on that
or
one,
it
too.
could have just been good marketing.
Could be good marketing. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. We'll be right back with the new films opening this week.
And this week we have some special events, including our monthly screenings of Tommy Wiseau's Wonderfully So Bad It's Good classic, The Room, that plays Saturday, April 13th at 10 p.m.
I guess that is technically classic now because it's old enough.
It's old enough. I guess
you
it's a classic.
Considered it, or it's just shown enough. And it makes it a classic. We also have the continuing Fathom Events and Turner Classic Movies, this time featuring the Warner Brothers classic Ben-Hur on the big screen, Sunday, April 14th at 1 p.m. and Wednesday, April 17th at 6 p.m. The first new film we have opening this week is the previously mentioned just moments ago, The Public, written and directed by Emilio Estevez. Just played as the closing night film, actually, down at the Cleveland International Film Festival. He plays a librarian, and during an act of civil disobedience, turns into a standoff with police when the homeless people in Cincinnati take over the public library to seek shelter from the bitter cold.
The homeless man was found dead outside the public library.
When it gets this cold, I don't know why they don't just let us stay here.
Mr. Griffith, I gotta talk to you. There's not enough shelter for us people on the street.
Who is us?
We could all come stay at your place.
There are a lot of cop cars. Is everything all right?
Patrons are staging an action.
The library has not been sanctioned an official emergency shelter.
So now is probably not a great time to come and get my library card.
So come on down, bring your sky.
This is Detective Bill Ramsden. Sooner or later, you're gonna have to open that door.
They're not coming out of there unless we make them.
Dave, you've actually seen this one. I went to a different film closing night, so I did not see The Public ahead of time.
Yeah, and one thing we need to mention is, of course, The Public was produced right here in Ohio. It was shot down in Cincinnati. Actually, so was Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile.
Right.
That was also filmed. So we've had a couple of Ohio productions here at the film festival. But The Public, with Emilio Estevez, he makes very sincere, kind of socially conscious movies. We had a film that we played here for quite a while, The Way, which was extremely popular here at the Cedar with his dad. Yeah,
I forgot he did that. I was just thinking that as the Martin Sheen movie.
Yeah, no, it was Martin and Emilio. Yeah, we actually had them. They were both at Tower City for a screening of that, so I got to meet them both at that screening.
That played forever here.
Yeah, it was extremely popular, and so this is another film it's kind of like that. It is sort of a feel-good, very nice little film that people really responded to at the film festival.
Oh, yeah.
There was there were a lot of people were crying at the end, which I always joke that I'm dead inside. It did not make me tear up, but it was it's got a very nice message, and it's got some great performances in it. So it's nice to see Emilio Estevez continuing to have this really vibrant kind of second wave to his career.
I was thinking that too as a director, but then I was looking up his directing credits. He directed Men at Work as well.
Yeah.
Like he's been directing, off and on throughout the years there. This movie immediately made me think of his movie they did called Bobby, the multi-character assassination of Bobby Kennedy movie. Where it's like, another movie he really likes with the one location. Kind of setting for a lot of his stories, because I think he also wrote Bobby as well. But The Way actually, I guess one location is nature in that one, but
just out on a trail
just a little bit. But you mentioned the cast. The cast on this one is crazy. We have Emilio Estevez obviously starring it, but you also have Alec Baldwin, Jenna Malone, Christian Slater, Jeffrey Wright. Like is it one of those he's just been around so long that he has enough of a Rolodex? He'd be calling
his friends,
calling all the friends to
come to Ohio and make a cheap movie with me, because this wasn't a big budget film,
right? So. One location, but also the you mentioned that it was set in Cincinnati, but like you said, it was also shot in Cincinnati. That library down there is just a gorgeous bit of architecture as well. Like it is a great setting for if you're going to pick one location to have set your movie in. A gorgeous new modern architectural library is definitely one of those to use.
And this week we're also going to be opening up Diane, which is directed by Kent Jones and stars Mary Kay Place. It is a drama about a mother who kind of fills her days helping other people as she's trying to mainly kind of reconnect with her drug-addicted son. And it just tells her story over the years as she's kind of always putting herself in the background to help others.
Mom, what are you doing here?
I'm making sure you're alive. Take a shower and get cleaned up.
What? You just come over to stare at me now?
As cheerful as ever.
Feeling okay?
I'm fine.
Liar.
What, you think we're all gonna live forever?
Here we go.
Well, pardon me.
I just want to know, for once and for all, do you forgive me or not?
I forgave you, but I haven't forgotten.
Should say written and directed by Kent Jones.
Yes.
Because I don't necessarily... He has a great background as a film critic and a programmer at the Film Society Lincoln Center. And when the previous work that he's done has all been documentary. The Hitchcock-Truffaut documentary is, I would say, required
viewing
for all cinephiles out there. Also, the book that it's based on is an unbelievable guide if you're getting into filmmaking as well. You hear Hitchcock and Truffaut. Well, you don't hear them. You read them. All their like tips and tricks over the years. You just get to read Truffaut just totally geek out about one of his favorite directors. So you've seen this one. How does it translate from film critic, film programmer, documentarian? Now he's doing his first narrative feature film.
I can definitely, it's a beautiful movie, and I loved it, and I would highly encourage people to see it. It is just a quiet film, very naturalistic, so you can kind of see that his background is in these kind of things, because it is really just showing a real person's life, and it's not built around kind of big moments, like in the kind of dramatic arc of it is not building up. There's not big waves. It's like this is happening right now, and it's all about her sign. Kind of like I said, she puts herself in the background and is helping other people, but you just see these moments where she needs things for herself. She like her right. She needs these moments where she's just gives so much for everybody else that she's put herself so much in the background. And we've had a lot of films lately, like Ben is Back and Beautiful Boy, where are about parents dealing with a drug addicted son. Yeah, this is similar in some ways, but it's also not the main point of the story. I mean, that's a big part of it, that kind of relationship, as she's trying to help her son get over this, but then whenever he does get over it, he kind of replaces that addiction with religion, and there's conflict. Something to obsess over. And so the conflict becomes reversed, sort of, as he's trying to hound his mom about going to his church, and she's like, leave me alone. He's like, well, you wouldn't leave me alone when I was addicted to drugs. So that's what I'm saying. But it had a very real feel to it, and it just goes through true moments in life without any kind of you don't ever see like 10 years later or 5 years later, but you just know that time has passed, and like this has happened. And Mary Kay Place is just, she's such a great actress that's always been mostly kind of in the background in a lot of things and supporting roles, but she just is such a great lead in this, and I loved it, and it's a really wonderful movie, so I hope people come out and see it. It is such a small film that a lot of people probably aren't even aware that it exists, so hopefully you're hearing this, listening to it, and you'll come see it, because I think you'll really appreciate the experience. It's worth noting, too, it's one of those written specifically for her as an actress as well, and then when I read that, I was like, I need to think of a few titles to mention to people to go see. There wasn't really one that stood out as like, that's a Mary Kay Place film, because like you said, she's been mostly just doing quality supporting character or character actor work over the years. 135 acting credits over 5 decades. Like, she definitely has the experience and the talent. So it's good to see, a director and a writer come along and be like grabbing somebody. No, you are front and center. Let's exercise those muscles, show your chops. But like you said, also not really in a showy way, just in a true, actor's kind of film, kind of sink your teeth into a meaty role kind of way. She does get to express every kind of moment that a person has in their life, though, in this film. But there's just so much of it is just in her face. You know what I mean? It's not about big scenes of emotion. It just really felt. It actually it reminded me of people in my family and situations in my family. So anytime you watch a movie that you kind of can see elements of your own life in, it just, and I think people will see that themselves. The third one we are opening this week is a Icelandic film called Woman at War from director Benedikt Erlingsson. This is about Halla, Halla. Is that how you would say that? I would say Halla. Halla, a woman in her 40s who declares war on the local aluminum industry and becomes a determined environmental activist. But this also threatens a long-held hope of hers, which I've read a bunch about this film. I'm not going to reveal it in case that is a spoiler, because I'm not sure narratively how that comes in. But it does. Her activism comes into conflict with something that she's been trying to accomplish in her life for quite a while. This is the director's. He's got a pretty good track record so far. He did a film that I saw at the film festival years ago called Of Horses and Men. But as I mentioned to you before we were recording, Dave, it was one of those days where I saw like 5 movies in a row, and it's kind of blurry. And I meant to go revisit it because the Norwegian, not even Norwegian, I would say Scandinavian films that I've seen over the years, especially the comedies. There's just such a unique comedic sensibility in that area of the world that you don't get with American or Hollywood films. That is correct. And I want to note the director, he's only made 3 features. 2 of his films, including Woman at War, were selected to be Iceland's official submission to the Academy Awards. So that's a pretty good track record. That's great. 2 out of 3 there. This one does seem to be like it's going to fall in the line of
A Man Called Ove, which we had here that seemed like it played for like 3 months. People just loved that one where it's sort of the lovable outsider or curmudgeon and how he or she is kind of dealing within their community.
Yeah, and again, this is one I haven't gotten to see yet, but the trailer certainly plays like that, and I know that critically it's gotten extremely good reviews.
Right.
So I think that this hopefully will find its audience as well here.
And we'll be right back with our Cedarly 3 picks for this week, inspired by Woman at War. We also have an upcoming anime title to let you all know about, Penguin Highway, Sunday, April 14th at 7 p.m. This is one of those wonderful only in anime kind of premise here. When penguins start appearing in a sleepy suburb hundreds of miles from the sea, Ayama vows to solve the mystery. When he finds the source of the penguins is, of course, at a dentist's office.
That's where all penguins come from.
I showed it to my daughter who's 9 though, and she was me because she loves penguins. And she was like, "I want to watch this movie." Right? Like, yeah, it's adorable. Like you can't help but just be charmed, even just with a preview of it. So Sunday, April 14th, 7 p.m. for that show.
And then we also have a special 40th anniversary showing of Monty Python's Life of Brian on Thursday, April 18th at 7:30 p.m. This, if you come to see this show, you'll get an anniversary pack, which includes a limited edition poster and a cutout beard. So in case you're going to want to be in disguise the next time you go to a public stoning, you'll have a beard to wear.
So each week we like to take inspiration from one of the new films opening and suggest 3 films to broaden your cinematic world with our Cedarly 3 picks. This topic for this week is inspired by Women at War, so we went with activist films. And Dave, the only thing we've discussed ahead of time was documentary or fiction.
Right. And I went with narrative only because if you started the, obviously you could talk for a year and a half about activist documentaries. So I thought it would be a little bit more interesting, since the film we're talking about, Women at War, is a narrative, to keep it in that realm.
I did the same thing. Actually, it sounds like a whole separate podcast. There's a never-ending supply. It's a whole sidebar down at the film festival that they have of standing up. It's all activist documentaries.
That is true. And well, the first film on my list, I picked Milk by Gus Van Sant from 2008, all about Harvey Milk, the biopic about San Francisco's first gay elected city councilman who became just a tremendous leader in that community, and of course died tragically and was assassinated by a man who used what is now known
Twinkie.
As the Twinkie defense.
I forgot about that.
So it's just the most shocking, egregious bit of injustice in American history, that this person was not held accountable for a terrible act of murder. And you don't have to say spoiler alert whenever it's a historical.
I know. I was just going to say, I remember that being, I was describing it when it played here to people, and they were like, "Oh, like you told me the ending." I was like, "It's a known thing." Also, it didn't happen like last year. This has been around, and there's a whole documentary that won an Academy Award about him and the murder itself too. Like, it's not really a spoiler.
But no, it's got great performance by Sean Penn as Harvey Milk, and supporting with James Franco. So it's a really great film. So I'd encourage people, if you missed Milk when it was out 11 years ago, this is a great time to revisit it. And Aaron, what's the first film on your list?
I'm going to go with, I didn't write down the date for it, but Panther, the Mario Van Peebles film, based on the novel that his father, Melvin Van Peebles, in my opinion, a superior filmmaker, but that's fine. It portrays the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and it traces the organization's founding through its kind of decline and its infiltration by the authorities in America that saw it as a threat to the, standard kind of paradigm of power in the country. It's also kind of you mentioned it with Black Klansman to me. I don't remember if it was on mic or not, about how that was a good like pop history version of it, which is a great way to describe Panther as well, where it's not necessarily entirely historically accurate.
It's not a documentary.
But it's not a documentary, right? And it does take some creative license with a few things, but it's also a pretty interesting presentation of it. And I don't think there's any other, I was trying to look and see if there's been any other fictional films about the Black Panther Party for self-defense, and there's plenty of documentaries that are great, but I think this is the only one that I could
that's just specifically about the Black Panthers. Yeah, I mean, there's certainly lots of films where they're a part of.
Right, a scene in Forrest Forrest Gump does not count as part of that. So, but it's also one of those things that's kind of forgotten to history. I want to say it's like early 90s, maybe 1990.
Yeah.
But it is, it's a really good central performance as well.
His follow-up after New Jack City, I
think so, yeah.
So,
but yeah, it is worth, I don't know if it's streaming anywhere, but it is definitely worth finding and giving a shot if you don't know too much about it.
I remember the cinematography in that movie being beautiful.
Yeah.
Like, it's got a lot of, kind of a... I can't even describe
like high contrast shots and some slow motion.
Yeah, I just remember the cinematography being interesting.
Yep.
Well, the next one on my list, I don't even know if we're going to traditionally call it an activist film, but I'm going to call it one. And that's
your list, Dave.
It is my list.
Do whatever you want with it.
And it's Year of the Dog from 2007 by Mike White.
Okay.
It is the Molly Shannon film.
Oh, right.
And I call it an activist film because what happens is this is a woman. It's a weird dark comedy like most Mike White movies.
You don't say.
Where she plays a character who after her dog dies, she basically becomes kind of this animal rights kind of obsessive person, and it becomes almost evangelical about that, and is like trying to save all these dogs, and then becoming vegan. Like I just remember the scene about her like bringing like vegan cupcakes in and all this stuff. So I say like it's not really an activist film but she sort of becomes an activist out of mental instability, but I think it's an interesting way to become.
Yeah, I think it counts.
Yeah,
because it addresses a lot of traditional activist issues as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting way of kind of getting into that and sort of a character study about a woman as she discovers whatever triggers her newfound direction in life. So
it's also just the ones you mentioned so far, Milk and Panther are about real people, real organizations, and this is more just like more human drama with containing activist issues.
And it's a great weird little movie. I'm usually a fan of Mike White's, and this one didn't disappoint with Molly Shannon being typically perfectly cast in a kooky kind of role.
I say she works good too with like the kind of off dialogue and kind of plotting that he does. Like she's able to really make that relatable and sell it really well.
Absolutely. And what's next on your list?
Mine is, we're going to head over to France for a minute. BPM, Beats Per Minute, from director Robin Campillo. My French tongue is not very, very good there. Campillo. This is about the advocacy group ACT UP as they were protesting and demanding action by the government and pharmaceutical companies in Paris, well, France in general, mainly in Paris during the AIDS epidemic in the early 90s. And this one is kind of the definition, I guess, of an activist film in comparison. But it's I like this one for the scenes they have that of just how groups organized. Like it's a procedural in a lot of scenes where you just see how kind of like a non-hierarchical collective gets together and makes decisions and allows people to speak and comes to a consensus, which you don't usually. That's like a quick moment or two when they make a decision. But there's extended scenes where they are going through the ins and outs of like, well, what would be the most effective thing, because literally lives are on the line in this type of protest and this sort of activism. And so people want action right now, but you kind of have to look at the long-term goals, and it's really fascinating how it kind of parallels that with also scenes of like great celebration and the friendship of that community is also very front and center. It's not all just dire, life or death activism. There's also a lot of like really good, intense, like there's budding romances and relationships and also I just, for some reason, I immediately picture the parade scenes and the big celebrations of everybody just like actually they're having fun as well.
And for the marketing of that film, they used like an image of that. Like it's a joyous image.
It is, yeah. There's like confetti going off. Yeah, it's celebrating out in a parade.
And it's beats per minute is what the BPM stands for. So that's a thing for dance as well. So it's a lively kind of thing over about a serious topic, obviously. And that was on my possible list. And so if you didn't talk about it, I was going to talk about it. So I think we've learned now, like, we better have a couple of extras just in case.
Yeah, I did actually.
But BPM, great movie, and it certainly belongs on the list.
I think it's also streaming for free on Canopy. That's where I watched it. That's where I watched it the second time a little bit ago.
It's on one other thing too. I can't remember. I feel like I've just seen it. You're right. Yeah, that is free. As long as you have a library membership.
Well, that's true. Which is also free.
All right. So the next one we're going to talk about for activism is Silkwood, the Mike Nichols film starring Meryl Streep and featuring a truly amazing performance by Cher as her lesbian coworker, best friend. It is just a really haunting movie about workers at a nuclear power plant, and the woman who becomes sort of like the voice of the importance of safety here in this, and again, I don't know. Again, spoiler alert, but it's
From
a historic film. So
80s?
It's 83. Yeah,
okay.
1983. It's it doesn't end very well. It is about sometimes activist voices get silenced.
Yeah,
is the
a lot
nicest
of
way to
times.
say it. And no one really knows whatever happened to this woman exactly. So the film sort of theorizes about the things that led up to what probably happened. So it's a great movie, though. If you've never seen Silkwood, it is one that absolutely stands the test of time, and just incredible performances. Obviously, Meryl Streep's pretty much always incredible.
Yeah.
There's not a whole lot of times where you leave it to go, oh, Meryl Streep wasn't quite good.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe Mamma Mia. You could definitely say she shouldn't have been.
There's defenders of that one, so watch out.
But it is a great movie. So if you haven't seen it for a while, or if you've never seen it, Silkwood should definitely be kind of required viewing, I would say.
I haven't seen it in a long, I watched it on VHS. That's how long ago I watched it, and I was not remembering that it was based on a true story.
Mm-hmm.
I was thinking it was like, just...
I think her name, Karen Silkwood, was the person's name. So yeah. Mm-hmm.
That will require a revisit then, because I remember very little other than who's in it and the VHS box cover art for it. My last one is I got to go with Spike Lee, because he's made so many great kind of activist or social justice themed movies over the years. I think probably my favorite is Chirac, because it's such a confluence of things when you read the description that shouldn't necessarily work.
Mm-hmm.
He took the Greek play Lysistrata by Aristophanes and set it against gang violence in Chicago in Chirac. And I was like, what? Okay. And it even has like that kind of really heightened, it's not the original dialogue, but like it's a really kind of heightened dialogue that's not usually in Spike Lee movies. Co-written with his Academy Award winning screenwriter Kevin, I forget his last name now, but they wrote Black Klansman together. Frequent collaborator, I guess I should say. But it's the backdrop is, and also is one of my favorite taglines too, is "No peace, no peace," which is the women in Chirac are kind of organized around, we're not going to have sex with any of our partners until they stop all this gang violence. So it's a sex strike in order to stop all the gang violence, but it also ties in all kinds of the current plague of violence that's ravaging through Southside Chicago. And it has Samuel Jackson in some of the greatest suits he's ever worn in a movie as sort of the Greek chorus narrator to it as well. Lots of hats and a few canes and some great just like popping colors he's got in there too. So
excellent.
If you haven't seen Chirac, that one I think was an Amazon Studios movie. So that is up on Amazon if you want to check that one out. So join us on next week's episode when we will be discussing, as of right now, 4 new movies. We have Amazing Grace, High Life, Peterloo, and Teen Spirit. So next week's Cedar Lee 3 will be inspired by Amazing Grace, which is it's the documentary, documents the live recording of Aretha Franklin's Amazing Grace album in 1972. So our topic for next week is going to be great music documentaries. Submit your picks if you have any recommendations at Cedar Lee Theater using the hashtag CedarLee3, the number 3. As always, thank you for tuning in to Cedar Lee Radio and lending us your ears this week. All the music heard on the show is original music written by Grant Heineman and performed by the New Heights Jazz Ensemble, used with their permission, of course. Visit clevelandcinemas.com for correct showtimes and to purchase advance tickets. Also, there are links in the show notes. You can use those if you'd like as well. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. We are at Cedar Lee Theater, spelled with an R-E at the end because we're fancy like that. Don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you find your podcast, and while you're subscribing, leave us a rating and review, or better yet, tell a fellow film geek about the show. We'll see you at the movies.